This video is kind of lengthy, but we'll watch a couple of minutes of it.
This is an older one, isn't it?
Yes, it is. This is from the 80s. And mind you, this is CIA guys talking about what's going on like 40 years ago.
Frank, I think a good many of us have the impression that the CIA operates completely undercover, that you're all spooks, as they say, or they used to say out in the Pacific. Do you have a high profile, or do people know what you do for a living?
Surely. In Saigon, I had various covers. I was a State Department officer. I was a military officer at one time. But everybody I dealt with, agents, journalists, knew that I worked for the CIA. It is the agent who works under very deep cover, under unofficial cover, as a businessman, as a journalist. Now, he's the one who is not identifiable and whom nobody else would identify with the agency.
What years were you there?
I got there in 1969, just as Vietnamization was getting underway, and I left with the last CIA contingent on the American Embassy when the North Vietnamese were moving on the city in 1975. I was there through the latter stages of the war.
Did you go out on that helicopter in the famous pictures we saw?
Well, the CIA helicopter was the one that forms that famous photograph, but I wasn't on that one.
No. You briefed the press, did you not, when you were there?
Well, I had several jobs. One of my jobs was that of analyst. I also was an interrogator and indeed briefed the press when we, the CIA, wanted to circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not necessarily a lie. It may be a half-truth. And we would pick out a journalist. I would go do the briefing and hope that he would put the information in print.
There's how it's done.
They're literally.
Bob and I have both seen that in action.
Yes.
Yep. And it is on a much greater scale than some guy who happened to be in Hanoi that day. And now it's being done here in the United States to us by our own government.
Well, it's happening en masse.
Well, we just saw that, the beginning, those videos that I played. What he was just talking about that he was doing in Saigon in 1969, that's being run on us now. And it's a program called Mockingbird. And a lot of people know about Mockingbird. Well, it's still going, and it's here on our soil, and they're still doing it. And you got people out there going, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. I did the goddamn job. SIGINT we monitored that shit. We had cells that monitored that activity so we could see what the reactions were.
But once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I challenge everyone watching this show to watch a little bit of mainstream media and tell me that there isn't something going on in the background. You can't see it.
How you do it. Find the same topic on every major news network and line their reporting up. Watch 5 or 6 different major networks on the same topic and watch how their stories line up. Even Fox has taken the mask off now. Fox even reports in line.
Yep.
And everybody said Fox News was the good guys. No, they were never the fucking good guys. Okay.
They're controlled opposition. That's what it's called.
They're controlled opposition is exactly correct. So let's move on to this guy here, who is a guy named Doug Valentine, and he's talking about the CIA activity that was in the Ukraine. Now, the important part about these videos, this was Vietnam. Now, this guy is Ukraine. What I want you to listen to here, and this is from the perspective of a SIGINT guy, okay? These are 40 years apart. Listen to the similarities.
After World War II, communism became the bugaboo, and the Soviet Union became the enemy. And one of the things the CIA did right after World War II was hire a lot of Nazis, guys who'd been who had been Nazis were now recycled and brought into the CIA. The Nazi rocket scientist von Braun went to work for the United
They were
States,
just scientists,
developing
yeah.
intercontinental ballistic missiles. So the Nazi past was forgiven, and Nazis went to work for the United States, including a guy named Reinhard Gehlen, who'd been the Nazi military intelligence officer in charge of operations against the Soviets in Eastern Europe.
Somebody had to do it.
And this guy Gehlen became the head of the CIA's main intelligence operator into East Berlin and areas like the Ukraine, where the Nazis had intelligence agents during World War II. And this guy Reinhard Gehlen, on behalf of his new CIA masters, just activated all the agent nets that he had during World War II. The same thing was going on in Ukraine, although the Ukraine had very much large swaths of its population were fascists and were actively involved against the war against the Soviets, and were enemies of the United States in World War II. After World War II, became assets of the CIA. So the CIA has been developing fascist assets in the Ukraine for 70 years.
Wow.
And every year since 1948, when the CIA went into operation, it has had a station in the Ukraine with a CIA officer who's running operations. And those operations have all been directed against first the Soviet Union, and after the collapse of the Soviet Union, against Russia. There's a lot of momentum that has built up over 75 years. Vast agent nets have been put in place. Sleeper agents have been in place for decades, and they're all working against Russia, which is why nowadays it's so hard for the mainstream media and the government to shift and even consider for a moment having good relations with Russia. NATO, its whole mandate and its whole reason for its existence has been to threaten and roll back Russia and eventually sabotage and subvert it and put it out of business.
We need to get rid of NATO.
Well, we definitely need to get rid of NATO. What this guy is not saying, and again, I know this because I've seen this before, with particularly with the sleeper agents. Okay, when I was in South Korea, we actually had a couple of sleeper agent incidents. There were a bunch caught at a university. There were a couple that tried to infiltrate. One of them hid out in a barn, and this was 2000, I think. And the farmer noticed him, and the agent said, "If you talk, I'll kill you," not realizing that everybody in South Korea had cell phones by that time. The farmer walked out of the barn like, and turned around and pulled his cell phone out and said, "Hey, we got this guy here." And they went and picked him up. The best one, though, by far, was a sleeper agent who rolled up to MND, the Ministry of National Defense in South Korea, and walked in and said, "Hi, I'm a North Korean agent." They're like, "Wait, what?" And they called us in, and they called their guys in, and we sat down with this guy. He was infiltrated as a sleeper agent in the late 1970s. This guy is 2000. The guy's like 60 or so. And he had this successful noodle shop that was his cover front. And he's like, "I like noodles. I don't want to be a spy anymore. So I'll tell you everything if you let me keep my noodle shop."
Yeah.
And that actually happened.
So he defected.
He defected to keep his noodle shop, and that I know of. The noodle shop is still going.
Oh, good for him.
But what this guy's talking about with the propaganda and the media and everything, this isn't a new thing. This has been going on forever. Mockingbird's been going on since the 1950s.
Well, here's the thing, though, is now we're going to have all of this ramped up on steroids with the amount of surveillance and AI that's coming on board now.
That's exactly what's happening.
It's going to get
That's exactly what's
insane.
happening. And you heard this guy say, "Well, we couldn't stop it now because, we got all these assets in place and everything." Yes, you can. What you're not saying is we don't want to stop because we have our own agenda. The CIA is basically its own critter. And Washington, D.C., and I know people go, "That's a conspiracy theory."
No, it's not.
It's not. Listen to me. I want you to listen to what I'm saying. Washington, D.C. has, since the 1950s, become a hostile foreign state, an enemy of the actual United States since the 1950s. It acts as its own country and does whatever it wants and uses the United States for a means to. Is this the soldiers don't come from Washington, D.C.? Did you ever meet anybody in the Army who was from Washington, D.C.?
Maybe one or two people.
Right.
That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of a coinkydink. Because I met a lot of motherfuckers. You were in for 33 years, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
I was in for 11. I think I met one officer.
It's like two guys.
Right, exactly. And it is, I'm sorry, I firmly believe, this is my opinion, I will phrase it as such. Washington, D.C. is a hostile foreign power operating within the borders of the United States of America.
Uh-huh.
And we have a lot of evidence of it, including this CIA dude here who says, oh, we can't stop what we're doing because Nazis. Dude, you're the CIA. You're way worse than the Nazis ever were.
Now, let's just be honest. During the Cold War,
Yeah.
if, I was running the show
Mm-hmm.
and I had a chance to reactivate a bunch of spies that were hostile to the U.S.,
Well, yeah.
I would have done it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a standard it's a standard tactic. It happens all the time.
Yeah,
Anytime you've got a rollover like that after a war, when one country takes over another or knocks another country down, if you can get a hold of their spy networks, hell yeah, you're going to do that.
It's a huge head start.
It's a huge head start. It was done here in the colonies when we were first forming as a nation way back in like 1773.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff was going. There was a whole TV series about it.
Turn. I love that
Turn.
show. Yeah.
That's the one. Yep. Exactly. Now, here's John Stockwell. This is a former CIA agent.
Let's talk about the function of the CIA. I think a lot of us have an impression that all the CIA does is gather intelligence. Intelligence is information, of course. Now, one would think that if you obtained information that was based upon fact, and if that is so, what did you do with it?
Well, one of the four principal functions of the CIA is to gather intelligence and ideally forward it to the president, the users of information, the policymakers, as they say. There are other functions, however, some of them more legitimate than others. One is to run secret wars, the covert action that's written and talked about so much, like what's happening in Nicaragua today from Honduras. Another thing is to disseminate propaganda to influence people's minds. And this is a major function of the CIA. And unfortunately, of course, it overlaps into the gathering of information. You have contact with a journalist, you will give him true stories, you'll get information from him, you'll also give him false stories.
Did you buy his confidence with true stories?
You buy his confidence and set him up. We've seen this happen recently with Jack Anderson, for example, who has his intelligence sources, and he has also admitted that he's been set up by them. Every fifth story just simply being false. You also work on their human vulnerabilities to recruit them in a classic sense, to make them your agent so that you can control what they do. So you don't have to set them up sort of, by putting one over on them. So you can.
Yep.
BLM riots, anyone?
Yeah.
Are you guys hearing this? Are you hearing what these people are saying? It is everything that's going on in the United States today.
Well, first of all, there's nothing new under the sun.
No.
So these are tested tactics
Yes.
that worked in the past because we're still the
Yep.
same evil hairless monkeys. And
That
these
is correct.
tactics will work today.
Yep.
And
that is correct.
we're seeing it in real
Now,
time.
This one is this is a tweet. It says, "This is what mind control looks like. Operation Mockingbird never ended. The CIA controls the MSM. The conspiracy theorists were right again." Let's give this a roll.
Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our Treasure Valley communities, the El Paso, Las Cruces communities, Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
we are concerned about trouble and trying to be responsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become.
Now, that's a clip of the thing we watched the first time around, but now that we've talked about it for a second, you could hear it.
But here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
They were not planning on independent creators like you and I, Steve, and all of these other small creators to cover the stories that the mainstream media is glossing over, ignoring. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's incredible that once you see it, like Pop said a couple of minutes ago, once you see what's going on, you can't unsee it. And I think Pop's right. I think you're right, man, in that when the internet started to do what it does and go rogue and it turned into the Wild West, they couldn't get control of it. The CIA couldn't get control of any of it. The best they could do is try to shut channels down, ban people, demonetize people, and screw people over as much as they can, and occasionally throw somebody in jail in a really public and obvious way, or kick a door in and kill a guy like they did. I think it was the guy in Ohio.
Well,
no, you know what I'm talking about? He was like a 50-year-old guy who was like fat and out of shape, and they kicked his door in and shot him.
What were you talking about? The guy by the ATF?
That's one of them. Yeah.
No, well, people get whacked all the time, and it's covered up.
A lot of those, though, I think when they publicize it in that manner, like they did with Waco, the guy with David Koresh would jog regularly and would eat at a restaurant in town regularly.
And
they could have
easily at the same place.
Yep.
And here's another thing that most people don't know is David Koresh would call his barber 2 or 3 days in advance and set up appointments to get his hair cut.
Yes.
There's no fucking reason they had to burn that compound down and kill 130 plus individuals.
Yep.
All they really had to do was he could have walked out, done his jogging. They roll up behind him, hit him with a sack of nickels, cuff him, stuff him. It's done.
Yeah. It was a statement being made. Ruby Ridge, that guy they had him isolated on a mountaintop. You just wait for him to come down the road. The only way down was the one damn road. And they went up there, and then the FBI sniper, sorry, pal, I don't consider you even a human being for what you did, shot a mother holding a baby.
And his son.
The sniper didn't do that one.
I know. But
that was another agent that shot the son, but they killed his son as well. They killed his son. They killed a dog. But the FBI shooter, look, if you're a trained, wait a minute, we have a trained sniper here.
Yeah.
Let's ask him. Can we ask him?
Sure.
If you're a trained sniper and you've got the right equipment and you've got a bead on this house, are you paying attention to collateral? Are you paying attention to what's behind your target? Are you paying attention to the fact that silhouette doesn't quite look like a man because it's wearing a dress and holding a baby?
Well, first of all, whenever you observe stuff like that, it's under magnification. You could easily tell.
Yeah.
But there's different rules for war zone snipers and law enforcement snipers.
Mm-hmm.
So law enforcement snipers have to pay a lot more attention to that stuff.
Sure.
In a war zone, not so much. You got a weapon, you're getting popped. I mean, that's just the way.
What about if you're holding a baby and the shooter is a civilian?
You are a non-combatant.
Law enforcement. Yeah.
You are a non-combatant.
Yeah. There is no way, in my opinion, that shooter at Ruby Ridge didn't know he was shooting a woman with a baby.
And what year did that happen? Did it happen in 94?
93, 94, somewhere in there. But those things are examples of the government using terror to control the population. Because that story came out that Randy Weaver was this big, huge white power dude. And what he did is say, no, I'm not selling a sawed-off shotgun to a guy so that you can FedNap him.
Yeah.
I don't want to play your reindeer games. Yeah, I went to a white power meeting. So what? It's called freedom of speech. If we were just there talking about stuff, that's not a crime.
Yep.
So they made an example of him and turned it into this huge. They tried to turn it into this huge white power story, and it failed when the freaking FBI guy shot the woman holding a baby. The Lavoy Finicum thing, where he was like a 67-year-old rancher. They ambushed him on a road. He got out of a vehicle with his hands up, stepped 10 feet away from the car, and they gunned him down.
Yep.
And he was in freaking hip deep snow. And they just gunned him down. And if you watch the videotape, it's a classic, it's a rabbit ambush where you attack the side of the column so that you can get the lead vehicle that has the guy that you want to run. And then you pick him off further up the road so you don't have to deal with all of his buddies behind him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
it was a textbook ambush.
It absolutely was.
But
that happens all the time too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's part and parcel of the propaganda. The way that it relates to the media thing that we're showing you here is they create these situations. They create this violence, and then they feed the story to the media, just like you heard the guy talking about just now.
But listen, if we had 1 million subscribers or more, they would come after us in some fashion, because
that's why we can't get any subscribers, is my guess.
Well,
part of the reason, because we tell the truth about things.
Watch Grunt Speak live every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And if you want to join Pop for Supporters Sundays, go to redonkulas.com/donate and make a monthly pledge. A link is in the Meat Gazer box.